Hello everyone and welcome to the Roundup, where every single week we round up the biggest pieces of news and the best fantasy notes from fantasylife.com to help you dominate your fantasy leagues. We've got a lot of quarterback questions this week. We've got a lot of news to go through as well, so let's get into the Roundup for week 9. We had a ton of quarterback news going into week 9, so who should you trust to start in your lineups on Sunday? Let's go through some names. Now, before we talk about the quarterbacks that we can trust in our lineups going into week 9, let's go through all the quarterback news that we saw first. And we're going to start right here in Las Vegas. And of course, as always, I'm on the Board Pro 75 using the comparison tool at fantasylife.com. But Las Vegas, they went through a lot of changes this week, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But one of the big changes also was that they named Aiden O'Connell the starter. So Jimmy G is now QB2 in Las Vegas. He will get the start. O'Connell will get the start in week 9. The next piece of news we saw was Taylor Heinicke for the Atlanta Falcons. Arthur Smith named him QB1 for this weekend as well. This is also a week after Arthur Smith said that the criticism on Desmond Ridder was, quote, toxic groupthink. So we'll see what happens there. Taylor Heinicke did go in week 9 when Ridder had to go into concussion protocol, which he cleared, but now he is the starter again in week 9. Next up, Clayton Tune and Jaren Hall. I'm saying both of these names at the same time because they kind of go together. Clayton Tune is going to be the starter in week 9 unless Kyler Murray is good to go. He should be getting close though. But Clayton Tune is going to be the starter because Joshua Dobbs was sent to the Minnesota Vikings at the trade deadline because of that unfortunate Kirk Cousins injury that will keep him out for the remainder of the season. But the Minnesota Vikings did say that Jaren Hall was going to get the start over Joshua Dobbs. So we'll see if that flips in the weeks to come. But that's why we see Clayton Tune over there and Jaren Hall both getting the starts in week 9. Yeehaw! So out of these quarterbacks that we just talked about, who could be startable in week 9? The right answer might be none of them, but I know in deeper leagues and 2 quarterback leagues, we are kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel in week 9. So let's go through some of our rankings at fantasylife.com to see which quarterbacks we could look at starting this weekend. I really do want to highlight Daniel Jones there at the top. He is going to be good to go to play against the Raiders. He was having that neck injury and a lot of issues with it, but now he is confirmed and good to go. So that could be a solid option. Same with Baker Mayfield up there. And out of the quarterbacks that we talked about, we can see Taylor Heinicke right here. He is the best option out of those guys, out of Clayton Tune and Jaren Hall and Aiden O'Connell. Could be the best start for you for week 9. Here's some other options though. You've got Mac Jones going up against the Washington Commanders. You've got Matthew Stafford, who is questionable. So make sure you keep an eye on those injury reports. He could be good to go, but we will know a little bit later. And then of course you've got Jaren Hall and Clayton Tune. So obviously just not a great weekend for fantasy quarterbacks, but make sure you go to fantasylife.com and check out these rankings because it will help you in the long run. Now, we don't usually talk about matchups on this show because for us, it usually isn't the biggest piece of the puzzle that we want to figure out. But Ian Hartitz did an incredible job at fantasylife.com highlighting the strength of schedule for each position from week 9 to week 13. So let's go through the easiest wide receiver schedule. So, which wide receivers have the easiest schedule from week 9 to week 13? Let's take a look on the Board Pro 75. You've got the 49ers, Patriots, Cowboys, Colts, and Tennessee Titans. So because the Tennessee Titans already played on Thursday Night Football, Ian Hartitz has 3 players that you can go and look at on the waiver wire that could help your team out. Let's start by talking about Demario Douglas for the New England Patriots. Now, remember, Kendrick Bourne is out for the remainder of the season, so Demario Douglas is already going to see an uptick in work. He could be looking at, with this full-time role, potentially 6 to 8 targets per game, which really does put him in that wide receiver 3 category. And he also right now has a 24% target per route run, so that is really good news for him. Make sure you go and check him out if he is on the waiver wire and you need wide receiver help. The next name to bring up, I want to skip this one and go to Josh Downs right now for the Colts. We've already talked about Josh Downs so much on this show. His connection connection with Gardner Minshew is just phenomenal. So you can go and look at him. It looks like he is rostered in 63% of leagues. I will set a disclaimer though. It looks like he is questionable for week 9 with a knee injury. So just make sure you keep an eye on that, but still a really great player to go and look at. And then last but not least, Brandon Cooks for the Cowboys. With how well it looks like Dak Prescott has been playing and could continue to play, I think this is a really smart call out from Ian Hartitz to say, hey, Brandon Cooks could have some bigger weeks coming. So there are the 3 names of any wide receivers that have the easiest schedules coming up. Make sure you go and take a look at them. Las Vegas may not have been so lucky for some on Wednesday when it was announced by the Las Vegas Raiders that they were firing head coach Josh McDaniels along with their offensive coordinator and general manager. McDaniels was only 2 seasons into a 6-year contract, and he went 9-16 in that time and started this season 3-5. Now we can talk about this Las Vegas offense. They have pieces there. They have Jacoby Myers, they have Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, but we could tell, especially on Monday Night Football going up against the Lions, that there was absolutely no spark. So far this season, they've averaged 15.8 points per game, which is 30th in the league, and they have not topped 21 points. So maybe this is the change that they needed. With Aiden O'Connell starting in week 9, maybe we could see this offense get into something a little bit better. We are more than halfway through the fantasy football season, but that does not mean that we stop making moves. Dwayne McFarland has a running back that we should look at selling before it's too late.
So let's assume that Gus Edwards keeps the role that he's been in for the last 2 weeks. That's risky business, but hey, let's just have some fun with it. What does it look like? Based on data since 2011, the average finish is a running back 22. 12.7 fantasy points per game. That's not bad. That's something that you can use. But now let's step back, broaden out, assume maybe game scripts have played a little bit of a role, those sort of things, and see how he's done since J.K. Dobbins went down. Also had Justice Hill miss some time in there. It comes out to a running back 34, 10.2 points per game. And I really think that's your range. One of the big challenges with this sort of profile that doesn't get work in the passing game, doesn't create the explosive plays, they are so dependent on the offense running perfectly, the game scripts working right, that there's not a lot of upside. We don't see a lot of comps in the group. In fact, there are hardly any comps in the group that are breaking into the top 6 running backs. It's very rare to see that outcome. He needs more of that passing down role. And because of that, I look at him more like Brian Robinson Jr. Everybody loved Brian Robinson Jr. after 2 games. Why? Everything was going his way. Volume dependent, game script dependent, touchdown dependent running back that had those things working for him. Since then, how much do we like Brian Robinson? That's the kind of roller coaster we're probably going to be on with Gus Edwards, which is why I want to move him for some of these names.
Now it's time for one of our favorite times in the show. It is time to go through our underdog plays heading into week 9. But before we do that, I want to remind you again to make sure to use promo code LIFE to get your first deposit match up to $500. This is a limited time offer, so please do not wait. Make sure you go to underdogfantasy.com and use the promo code LIFE because they are matching your first deposit of up to $500. So now let's get into some of our favorite plays. Now that we are all logged in at underdogfantasy.com, let's go through our favorite plays for week 9. I've got 2 for you this weekend because I'm getting us back on track. By us, I mean me. We had a really good streak going and then all of a sudden got a little bit cold, but I can feel it. We are getting back on track. So I want to start here with the Atlanta Falcons going up against the Minnesota Vikings, and I'm going to go higher on Taylor Heinicke's 11.5 rushing yards. Speaking of the Minnesota Vikings, they blitz at the highest rate in the league, and so I think this is going to be a really good spot for Taylor Heinicke to start using his legs. We have him projected at Fantasy Life for 15.7 rushing yards, so I really do like this play. Next up, we're going to go all the way down to the final game in week 9. I know it stinks to wait that long, but I really like this play that we've seen over here, and it's going to be Breece Hall, and I really like his higher than 19.5 receiving yards. We have him projected for 20 26.9. So there is a huge difference there. And last week he had 9 targets. So I believe that this is a really good spot for Breece Hall going up against the Chargers. So those are our 2 plays going into the weekend. We are looking at Taylor Heinicke higher than 11.5 rushing yards, and we are looking at Breece Hall higher than 19.5 receiving yards. So make sure you go underdogfantasy.com. Make sure you use promo code LIFE for that deposit match of up to $500 for your first deposit, and go and lock these in. All right, that was the roundup heading into week 9. I appreciate everyone watching. Good luck this week. I know we have a lot of questions at quarterback and other positions, but make sure you go fantasylife.com to go use our rankings, use our tools. Everything there is 100% free. And while you are there, make sure you sign up for our newsletter in your inbox 7 days a week. We'll see you same time next week.